Hey guys, welcome back to another mom chat. Today, I want to talk about something that comes up a lot when we start talking about regulations, sensory issues, and understanding what's underneath your child's behavior. And that is, if I'm always trying to understand why my child is doing something, does that mean I'm supposed to excuse the behavior? Mm, Absolutely not. Okay. No. We're not going to do that. Understanding your child's behavior and excusing behavior are two completely different things. I can understand why you're struggling and still tell you that what you did was not okay. And as a mom and pediatric OT, I think that distinction is very, very important. Okay, so let's say your child comes home from school, right? They're completely overwhelmed. They've held it in all day, all day. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they've even been dealing with noises, transitions, demands at school, social expectations, and all the things, right? They get home and something small happens and suddenly they just explode. Now, understanding what happened throughout their day does give us the information, right? It helps us understand why that small thing may have just been the final straw. But if my child hits me, throws something at somebody, or does something unsafe because they're overwhelmed, I can still say, listen, I know you're upset. I'm going to help you through this, but I'm not going to let you hit me. Both things can be true. And I think sometimes we get stuck on one side or the other, right? We either focus totally on correcting the behavior, stop, don't do that, go sit down, you know better, nice hands. Or we swing completely the other side, right? To the other side. Um, and we become afraid to set a boundary because our child is dysregulated. But we need to come to that middle ground, right? I can support the nervous system and still hold a boundary. I can give you space to regulate and come back to what happened. I can acknowledge the feeling without approving the behavior. I can acknowledge, okay, you're frustrated, but okay, no, we're not going to hit, right? Because feelings aren't the problem. Your child is allowed to be angry. They are allowed to be frustrated. They are allowed to be disappointed. They are allowed to be sad. They're allowed to not like the answer I gave them, even. Our job isn't to make sure our child is happy with every boundary we set, but our job is to help them learn what they can do with those feelings. So instead of only saying stop hitting, eventually we want to help them learn, okay, when I am angry, what I can do, okay? Can you tell me you need space? Can you stomp your feet instead of kicking someone, right? That's safer. Can you ask for a break? Can we just move to a different space? Move away from whatever is going on. Can you use a strategy that we've already practiced? And remember what we talked about in the last chat. We don't want to wait until our child is completely overwhelmed to teach all of these things, right? Not the right time. The teaching often needs to happen after the nervous system has settled, after things have calmed down and they're more regulated. Because sometimes parents want to have the entire life lesson right there in the middle of a meltdown, and probably not the best time. It may not be the right moment, right? If your child is already overwhelmed, that 5-minute explanation about why their behavior was inappropriate may just be more information than their brains can process right there in that moment. Sometimes the immediate job is to keep everyone safe, keep them regulated or help them regulate, hold the boundary, then come back and teach the skill, the strategy, right? And coming back to it is important. Regulation shouldn't become a way to just avoid accountability altogether. Once everybody is in a better place, we can talk. We can sit down and talk about it. We can say, like, what happened? What did your body feel like? What could you have done differently for next time? What do we need to repair? Is there something that we really need to get in there and repair? Maybe they need to apologize. Maybe they need to clean up what they threw or tore up. Maybe we need to practice another way to communicate what they needed in that moment. That's where the learning happens. And I also want parents to remember this: behavior gives us information, it doesn't automatically give us permission. Understanding that my child was overwhelmed helps me to decide how I respond, right? It doesn't mean there shouldn't be a response. There's a difference. So, this takes practice for us and our kids because we're trying to move away from only asking, how do I make this behavior stop, right? How do I make it just go away? And start asking, what happened here? What does my child need? And what do I still need to teach? What do I still need to support them with, right? That little and matters, okay? Support and expectation, connection and correction, understanding and accountability. They can exist together. So if you've been worried that supporting your child's regulation means becoming too permissive, I want you to remember this. You can be compassionate without removing the boundary. You can understand the behavior without excusing it, and you can support your child while still teaching them that their actions have an impact. If you are struggling to figure out what balance your child may need, especially around regulation, sensory needs, routines, transitions, and behavior, DM me, send help. We could talk about what actually is happening in your home and come up with some individualized strategies that may make sense for your child and your family. And before you go, tell me in the comments which is harder for you, supporting your child through the emotion or holding the boundary when they're upset. I'll see you on the next Mom Chat. Bye.